Hello, welcome to the video version of the Rogersville City School Substitute Teaching Workshop for the 2024-2025 school year. If you are unable to attend the training in person, you may watch this video in order to fulfill your requirement to work as a substitute teacher this year. All subs must complete training each year, even if they subbed in our school system before. My name is Jennifer Ewing, and I'm a teacher at Rogersville City School entering my 25th year. I currently teach STEM and work in technology, but prior to that, I taught 17 years in 5th grade. Before becoming a teacher full-time, I worked for 6 years as a substitute teacher at RCS. I know firsthand how vital our subs are to the success of our school. When a teacher has to miss a day, it's a great relief to know that our students are in good hands. So thank you for all you do for our school. Now, let's look for a minute at what we plan to cover in this workshop. You should have also received an updated information packet that goes into greater detail than what we'll cover here in this training. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our assistant principal, Lindsay Davenport. So, first of all, we'll be covering an overview of what to expect as a sub, what your day will be like, what are the expectations, and also how much you'll get paid. In addition, we'll talk about general guidelines and procedures for working with students, dealing with lesson plans, and how to book jobs. And then finally, we'll talk about the next steps, what paperwork you need to complete, as well as any observations you'll need to do if this is your first time subbing. So an overview, Rogersville City School is a pre-K through 8 school, which means we have students as young as 4 all the way up through 14, 8th grade. We have what we consider lower and upper grades, so pre-K through 4th grade are usually considered our lower grades, and then 5th through 8th grade are considered upper grades. We also have a related arts department, which includes PE, band, music, art, library, and STEM. We have special education, English as a second language, tutoring classes, as well as assistants that you may sub for. Our pre-K through 2nd grade classes are self-contained, and what that means is that those students stay with the same teacher all day with the exception of lunch and related arts. They won't be changing classes. Our 3rd through 8th grade are departmentalized. This means they do change classes. Some of our grades are semi-departmentalized in that those teachers might teach just math and science and have 2 classes of math and 2 of science, and others are fully departmentalized. For example, a teacher might only teach math for the entire day, and they'll have 4 different groups that might rotate to them. Other things to note is that as a teacher, a substitute teacher, you'll have a planning period. You also will have a duty-free lunch, and you'll have recess in your day. However, during recess, you will be responsible for monitoring your students. As a sub, you can choose to work a full day, which would be 7:30 to 3 o'clock, or you can book half days. Sometimes teachers might need you only for the morning. In that case, it would be 7:30 to 11:30, or they may need you just for an afternoon, 11:30 to 3. You may also combine half days to get a full day of subbing. One note, though, as we're talking about full and half days, you might want to consider that if you're doing a half day, let's suppose you come in at 11:30, some grades have lunch prior to 11:30. So if you're relying on having that lunch time, you may want to eat before coming in at 11:30, if it's, say, kindergarten or 1st grade, because you would miss their lunch time. You may also be subbing for an assistant, related arts, or you might sub in one of the tutoring classrooms, and in special education. Each of these placements have special things to consider, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Some other expectations about working as a sub is that sometimes when you're in a grade where they change classes, you might be expected to help monitor the hallway as the students move from class to class. Now, for your pay. Working as a substitute teacher, your pay will be different if you're teaching for a teacher or if you're substitute teaching for an assistant. If you are currently a certified teacher and you sub for a teacher, you'll make $100 per day. If you're not certified, the pay rate is $80 per day. If you happen to be called to sub for an assistant, the pay rate is only $70 per day. All subs are paid monthly on the 15th of the month, and it will be through direct deposit. So let's talk a little bit about what to expect working as a sub. As a sub, you're basically on call. Most of your jobs will be prearranged jobs. The teacher will know in advance that they're going to be out. They'll contact you to see if you're available. They'll leave full lesson plans, detailed instructions for you to follow. But you will have some jobs that are last-minute bookings. Sometimes a teacher will have a child who gets sick in the night, and they may not know till the next morning that they were unable to come to work. And so sometimes you'll get early morning calls, or you might get evening calls. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to be flexible, because a lot of times, if you can take that last minute call, that will encourage other teachers to call you more often if you're wanting to book more often. Sometimes you might get pulled from one particular placement. This is not very common, but let's suppose that you had subbed 2 days in a kindergarten classroom, and then that teacher realized that she was going to be out for a third day, and you've already been booked for that other day with another teacher. The administration might make a decision to continue you in that same classroom and move the other sub to the other booking. So being flexible really helps when you're working as a sub. You'll have the ability to set your available days and what classroom areas you'd like to work in. For example, some people only want to work lower grades. When I was a sub, I was going to school to be a teacher, so I knew that I had classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays and could only sub Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So whenever you finish all the paperwork to become a sub, you can let the office know what your availability is and what grades that you're willing to sub in. Sometimes people will say that they don't want to work in a specific area, but as I subbed longer and learned more about each area, I began to feel more comfortable teaching those areas. For example, in a music classroom, I'm not a music teacher, but the music teacher knows when they call a sub that the person they're calling is not a trained music teacher, and so they'll leave plans that anyone can follow. It might include, watching video content that covers the music standards for that day. You can also set your availability as to how much notice you need. If you need 24 hours notice, that kind of thing. And then even your time of year, some people work seasonal jobs, and you can specify that when you set your availability. Our school day runs from 7:30 to 3, so if you get called to sub, you'll be expected to be in that classroom at 7:30 ready to work. So a little bit more about what to expect. At the beginning of the day, what you'll need to do is you will go to the office and you will sign the notebook. There's a notebook that's located in the office hallway underneath the teacher mailboxes, and it just tells, it's sort of a running record of what days that you're subbed, and it helps with bookkeeping. You also need to clock in. There is an app, a website that we use called My Benefits Channel. You'll get an account with that once you've completed all your sub requirements. You'll need to get a room key from someone in the office. Typically, this might be Vicki or Angie working in the office. Sometimes the teacher, if they know in advance they're going to be out, they'll leave a room key in their mailbox for you to use. But if you happen to need to use the one from the office, Vicki or Angie's, you'll need to, after you've unlocked the classroom, go back down, have a student, or you can run that key back down to the office so that it can be used for other people. At the beginning of the day, when you get in the classroom, you'll want to immediately check those lesson plans. Now, some teachers leave very detailed notes, and then others will just expect you to follow the plan book. If at any time you're unsure about what the instructions in the plans mean or in the notes that the teacher left, you can check with another teacher in that area and they'll be able to decipher it for you. Now, since sometimes emergencies arise and the teacher doesn't know in advance that they're going to be out, they may not leave a detailed lesson plan. You can do one of two things. One of the things that I would do sometimes is just check with the teachers in that grade and say, do you have any idea what they were working on? Lots of times they'll be able to pull together some materials for you so that they can sort of continue with the lesson. Most of the teachers know what each of them are doing in their same grade level. But the office also has what we call emergency plans, and this is just for this situation. If the teacher did not know they were going to be out, didn't have any plans, or their plan book is with them, then the office can provide you with those emergency lesson plans. Another thing that you'll be expected to do in the morning is, once you take that attendance, you'll mark which students are absent. You'll need to call that into the office. And then what I always like to do as soon as I got there is just read over that lesson plan. Most teachers will lay everything out. They'll have everything labeled so that you know what things are where, how to locate things. And then a lot of times if you can't find something, another grade level teacher can help you, or the teacher may let you text them or contact them if you have any questions. But in general, what you're supposed to be doing during the day is basically following that teacher's lesson plan. One of the things that can be troublesome is sometimes the teacher will leave detailed lesson plans for you to follow, and they're hoping that you will follow those lesson plans so that when they return, the students won't have missed a full day of instruction. Now, sometimes that can't be avoided. Things happen, special events happen. There might be a special program going on. But in general, if you can follow that lesson plan, teachers will want to call you back for a job. And so following the lesson plan really helps us so that we can pick up where you left off. You'll also be expected to stay with your students. You should never leave students unattended. This includes walking them to and from related arts and lunch. Now, there is a little bit of a disclaimer to this. Some grades have one teacher who will take turns walking the students to lunch. So in general, just check with the teachers in that grade level. Another exception might be a grade that's close by to a specific related arts class. For example, 7th grade is right across from the new gym. So those students walk directly to the new gym. And then older students, as they get older, they get the freedom to walk to and from related arts. So just checking with the other teachers in that grade level will let you know what the procedure is. When your class has recess, you're expected to watch those students during recess. And that just means being vigilant, making sure students are being safe, that kind of thing. At the end of the day, you'll escort students to their exit area, especially if they're younger students. Some grade levels have a system in place where one teacher may walk the car riders to the back door, the other teacher may walk the first grade walkers to those doors. And then finally, just another general thing you'll need to know about is our classroom doors. Our classroom doors stay locked as long as there are students in the classroom. Now, when you're having planning while students are related arts, or you're eating lunch in the room, this does not apply. But whenever we have students in the classroom, we always keep our doors locked. Students are very familiar with this procedure. At the end of your day, you'll need to leave the teacher a note about how the day went. This would include how far you got in the lesson plan. Most teachers leave more than enough stuff to fill the time slot, but sometimes you didn't get finished with everything, so this is really helpful to the teacher if you can say this is where we left off. You will also want to include any discipline issues if somebody misbehaved, or if this class was really well behaved. I always like to write that down as well. If a student is absent, that's helpful information to include too. I know that the attendance has been called in, but it helps the teacher know what materials to gather for that student when they return, and also that they missed instruction. And then finally, you'll need to clock out with the My Benefits Channel app. One other thing to note is, as a substitute teacher, you're going to be privy to some information about students that would be considered confidential. So as a substitute teacher, you must maintain the strictest level of confidentiality about students' RCS. This means not sharing information about a student's academic ability or performance or behaviors. School employees are bound by law to maintain student privacy. Some examples of information that you might not know right away that are private would be things about a student's personal life. Sometimes a student may come in to school visibly upset, and there may be something going on at home. As you teach the students, you will see their grades when you're, maybe checking work if the teacher has asked you to do that. This is also information that has to be kept confidential and is not to be shared with anyone. You'll find out about students' health issues. This is a matter of safety. It has to be shared with you as a substitute teacher. but this again is private information that can't be shared. And then also behavior. Some of our students will have behavior plans in place because they're struggling with different aspects of behavior, and as a part of their support, we'll have a plan to help them. That's also considered something that needs to remain private. And then also we have students who have IEPs or individual education plans. This again is something that must be kept private. Some guidelines to consider about different aspects of teaching, and again the packet that you received goes into way greater detail and has lots of tips and helpful hints to help you with these things. But with lesson plans, generally just following that lesson plan and then documenting how far you got in the plan if you had to modify it. If there are no plans, we mentioned previously in the last slide that notify another teacher on that floor, and then he or she can help you locate the teacher's plan book, and maybe can help you locate supplies as well. And then contacting the office if you can't find the teacher's plan book, and do those emergency plans. One thing I would mention as working as a substitute teacher, that as you get more experience, just having a collection of time fillers that you can use whenever a lesson ends early. This happens a lot in teaching. If you're the regular classroom teacher and your lesson that you've planned doesn't fill up the entire time slot, the regular classroom teacher has other things that they know that they can pull out and go to. So you as a substitute teacher, if you can start coming up with like short games you can play in class, or just your own collection of time fillers that will help fill that time slot, that's a great strategy to have. A little bit about the technology at Rogersville City School. One thing you need to know is that Rogersville is a one-to-one school. This means each student has his or her own device. In grades K through 3, this device is an iPad. In grades 4 through 8, this device is a laptop. And so that brings its own set of pros and cons. Some good things is that it's easy to have activities when you're absent and a sub is having to take your place, but also it requires some extra vigilance on our part as teachers, really monitoring the students' use of that technology. My advice to you when it comes to students using technology, if the teacher has left it in their lesson plans to use the technology, I always are walking around the room so that students know that I can see their screens. Most of the time students are, they're not doing anything bad. They just are trying to get on different gaming websites because they love to play games. Sometimes students will ask you if they can play a certain game on the iPad, or play a certain game, go to a certain website with a game. And my advice is to check with the other teachers in that grade and see if that's something that's allowed. Usually we don't use the devices for recreation, it's usually just for education, but there may be some educational games that teacher allows at certain times. So always check with the other teachers in that grade if the teacher didn't leave this instruction in their notes. Each of our classrooms is set with a classroom board, which is a digital display panel. It's basically like a giant tablet. Those boards are capable of going to websites, and then also you can plug in the document camera that's in there directly into that board. If you get into a classroom and you're unsure of how to use the board or the document camera, any of the technology that you have in the classroom, you can contact Stephen McKinney in technology, or you can call me, Jennifer Ewing, and it's listed on the teacher's phone number list, which should be posted somewhere near the phone. At the end of the day, you'll want to make sure the student devices are back in their cart and put on the chargers. And then also the document camera, lots of times teachers will let you use the document camera. You'll have let's say a worksheet you might be completing together. And so lots of teachers will do the notes under the document camera and project it to the board. They may have the worksheet that they're completing together as a class. So all of that can be used without using the teacher's laptop. And again, just calling someone in technology for help if you're not sure how to set it up. It's really simple once you've done it that first time. So one thing to note is about the classroom procedures that teachers have in place to make the class run smoothly. As much as possible, if you know what the procedure is for these things, following it will make your day go much more smoothly. Teachers have these set up just to make things more streamlined so that students know what to expect. For example, they may have a procedure for what they do when they come into the classroom in the morning. This is how we line up for lunch. What do you do if you need to sharpen your pencil? Teachers have these set procedures for all of these things, and they vary from classroom to classroom. Many times, as we say with technology, students will say, well, that's not how Mrs. Such and Such does it. And to that I would sometimes say, well, how does Mrs. Such and Such do this particular thing? The kids will know what the procedure is. So if you can find it out from the kids, if the teacher didn't include it in their notes, that'll be really helpful to you because it helps them stay in that established routine. Sometimes, though, things happen and I would just say, when the student says, that's not how Mrs. Such and Such does it, and I would just reply, yes, I know. Mrs. Such and Such has given me permission to make these decisions today. But if you can follow those procedures, it really does help. For example, like how we pack up, this is how we collect classroom work, even classroom jobs. Sometimes some classrooms, the teacher will have a line leader and a door holder. So trying to stick with those procedures will make the day go much more smoothly for you. Some other things to think about for guidelines is classroom management. One of the main things that I worried about as a new sub was, would I be able to manage the classroom? What if discipline issues arose? And in the packet, there are some really good pointers about maintaining classroom discipline. When I was going to school to become a teacher, I had a really good classroom management teacher, and she was just no nonsense and just had such solid advice. So I've included some of the things that she taught me when I was becoming a teacher. One of those were to just try to maintain a positive classroom environment. You're only in there for one day usually, but lots of times a teacher will call you repeatedly throughout the school year once they know that they can rely on you. And so just having a positive environment, you being positive in general, really does help with classroom management. My advice would be to be firm but respectful. Yelling is never a good idea for dealing with kids. Many kids are triggered by that. And so just, holding your boundary when you're trying to, maintain the rules, making sure that students know what to expect from you. One thing I would caution you about is not trying to be the fun, cool, permissive teacher. Sometimes substitutes will think, if I let them, do this or that, then the kids will like me, and then when I come back the next time, they'll be really happy that I'm there. This 99% of the time backfires. If they know that they can get away with certain behaviors, then the next time you come back to that classroom, it's going to get a little bit worse each time. As we mentioned before, when students are using technology, really monitor that. Sometimes, depending on how the classroom's set up, sometimes I'll stand at the back of the room so I can see everyone's screen. They're really adept at pinning browser tabs so that it's not obvious that they're off task, or just being on other things when they're supposed to be doing a certain activity. Being visible and being in a place where students know that you are paying attention to what's going on in the classroom is super helpful. Students are not supposed to have their cell phones with them, so this could become a discipline issue. So they're allowed to bring their cell phones to school, but they have to stay turned off and in their backpacks. Another bit of advice is just to be with it. The professor that I mentioned earlier, that was one of the things she talked a lot about, is just knowing what's going on in your classroom. Notice if there seems to be some trouble brewing, or someone's beginning to get off task. Being aware of what's going on in the classroom is a strong classroom management tip. Many teachers will leave the name of a student that is trustworthy, that you can ask about things. They'll leave the name of a couple of students you can ask, and so that's a good strategy also. If at any time that you're having an issue with classroom discipline, you can always ask another teacher for help. And I would advise you that any time a student has misbehaved, always leave that name for the teacher. Sometimes a substitute will think, well, if I leave the names of some students who misbehaved, then the teacher will think that I was unable to manage that class. We're with the students all day, and we know how students will do sometimes. So if you leave the name of a student who misbehaved, me as a classroom teacher, I want to talk to that student because they need to know what I expect. I need to review the expectation for them, how we act when a substitute is here. And the trouble is if you don't leave the name of someone who misbehaved, when you get called to sub in that class again, that student knows that they misbehaved last time and you didn't leave their name. So my advice to you is to let the teacher know. If there's a serious behavior violation, if something's a little more serious happens, then I always let another teacher in that classroom, in that grade level, know what happened. And also, if something serious arises, you can always contact our principals in the office. One other thing about discipline and classroom management is that each grade level or classroom will have its own system for tracking behavior. In very young children, that might be a visible chart. With older students, they might, teachers sometimes will give a student a strike if something, if they start misbehaving. So you can ask another teacher in that grade level what that system is. Some guidelines about dismissal at our school: students don't go out any door at the end of the day. There are specific areas which they're allowed to exit. These include the back door. If it's a car rider or someone who rides early bus, the early buses typically get called right before dismissal, and so those students will walk to that area. We also have students who are walkers go to 2 different areas. If they walk down Depot Street, they go to the first grade doors. If they walk on Rogers Street, they'll go to the cafeteria. And each grade will have its own system about how to get those kids to those locations. So check with those teachers in your grade level. And as a reminder, subs don't do bus duty. If there's a teacher is out, they will arrange a trade for that bus duty with another teacher. Some miscellaneous things to know: often there are fire drills or special events that happen during the school day. And sometimes the teacher will remember to include that in their instructions, but sometimes they forget or they didn't know they're going to be out. So just checking with the grade level teachers in that area where you are and asking, there's no fire drill today, or if there's a program. So these things can interfere with those lesson plans. And a good strategy also, and this is included in the packet, but when you come into the classroom, and this is mostly posted beside the door, there'll be a clear acrylic mailbox that has a folder in it that contains our school's emergency plans, and these will include details about what we do during a fire drill, what we do during a tornado drill, if there's a lockdown drill, and we have more than one type of lockdown, so it'll have all those details in there. And just becoming familiar with that. There should also be a map posted near there that shows the route for the fire drill. You will use your radio in the event of a fire drill, and so another thing included in that packet is making sure that you can find that teacher's radio, their walkie-talkie in the classroom. You're supposed to keep the walkie-talkie on during the day, but you'll want to keep it kind of turned down so that it doesn't distract students too much as they're working. In the event of a fire drill, there are specific channels that each classroom is supposed to respond on. One other final guideline is just about how you dress as a substitute teacher. In general, we're supposed to dress professionally. So just dress like how you've seen other teachers dressed. And then on Fridays we're allowed to wear jeans, and then on occasion there'll be special dress-up days. And so sometimes the teacher might tell you that that's going on in the school if you want to participate in that or not. But our administration has just asked us as teachers and as substitute teachers that we dress professionally. Now, our final steps are, if you've never worked as a substitute teacher at our school, you have some paperwork to complete. So that was probably given to you when you signed up to become a sub. This will include your job application and then information about your tax withholding, as well as paperwork for your background check. Everyone who works in the school system has to pass a background check, and so there is a little bit of cost associated with that, and our finance secretary, Tina Bray, will make that appointment for you and get you set up with that. And she'll also show you how to set up your account for My Benefits channel so that you can clock in and out. If you've already done that in previous years, you don't need to do that again. Watching this video will fulfill your requirements to be able to sub this year. But if you've never subbed, you'll need to also complete some classroom observations. They generally happen from 7:30 to 11:30, and Lindsay Davenport, our assistant principal, is the person to contact to schedule that. You'll for sure want to you'll want to observe in a regular classroom at the beginning of the day so you can see what that workflow is as the day begins, as students come in. Students will start coming into your classroom at 7:30, but the official start of the school day is not to 7:55. And so being able to see what that looks like will be helpful to you as a sub. And then you'll also, maybe get a different observation based on where you would like to sub. If you know that you're interested in subbing in, let's say, art, you may want to do an observation there, or PE, or if you'd like to do lower grades and upper grades, that's helpful also too, because there are quite a bit of differences in how the classroom is run in those grades. So it's helpful to be able to see someone teach both of those placements. If you have any questions, you feel free to contact me. My name is Jennifer Ewing, and my email is ewingjay@rcschool.net. That's EWINGJ@rcschool.net, or Mrs. Davenport, our assistant principal, and her email is davenportl@rcschool.net.